Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 1 Samuel, the 30th chapter. And as we left off in the 29th chapter at the precipice, or just before the Philistines and the Israelites engage in war, David being on the side of the Philistines, the lords of the Philistines end up driving him away, telling him no, he cannot go to war with them, as they did not trust the Hebrews. And so David returns to back to the town of the Philistines, which leads us into 1 Samuel 30. And it came to pass, when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burnt it with fire, and had taken the women captives that were therein. They slew not any, neither great or small, but carried them away and went on their way. So these damn Amalekites came and raided the town, including that where David and his men and his women and their children and all that were. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept. So they started crying, stressed, until they had no more power to weep. Can you imagine that? And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him. So that's how pissed off and angry and messed up they were, right, over this matter, that they were even considering putting David to death. And the reason was because he was their leader. So they basically put responsibility on him. Because the soul of the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. So rather than giving into despair, he encouraged himself and remembered, the Lord is with me. And David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought thither the ephod to David. And David inquired at the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. So David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those that were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which were so faint that they could not go over the brook Besor. So they were too out of it, too tired, too weak, whatever the case was. So they kept them back to watch the stuff, whatever supplies they had left. And then the 400 that were good went along with David. And they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. And they gave him a piece of cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him. So he was basically about to starve to death. And they gave him food, so he would be good. And once he was good, as it says, for he had eaten no bread, nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. And David said unto him, To whom belongest thou? So where are you from? And whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, a servant to an Amalekite. And my master left me, because 3 days agone I felt sick. We made an invasion upon the south of the Cherethites, and the coast which belongeth to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. And David said unto him, Canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, Swear unto me by God that thou wilt neither kill me, nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company. And when he had brought him down, behold, they were spread abroad upon all the earth, eating and drinking. So David's men find this Egyptian. They uh they help nurture him, right? They give him the food. He comes back to how he is, and basically they make an agreement. If you take me to the camp of these Amalekites, I'll make sure that we're not gonna kill you, and I won't give you back to that master. Show you how Amalek deals, right? He just basically left them to die because he felt sick. So here they come down, they find them, and what do they see? A whole bunch of Edomites jumping around, drinking, probably doing their little tap dancing shit. So as it says here, continuing in verse 16, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil that they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. And David smote them from the twilight even unto the evening of the next day. And there escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men, which rode upon camels and fled. So they basically smote them. Me pull it up here. They were slaying and killing. It says here, and David attacked them from twilight until the evening of the next day. And you have the morning twilight, and you have the evening twilight. So it's likely this was in the evening, because this morning, the morning of that day, is when they had to leave the camp of the Philistines, right? And then they ended up coming to Ziklag and found this. And then, after weeping for a while, they inquire of the Lord. They find this Egyptian, and he leads them here. So more than likely at this time is now like twilight, evening. And they see these Amalekites all chilling and shit. So they just get to work on them, right? Start slaying them from that night, from that evening, all the way to the next evening. And they slew a whole bulk of them, except for 400 young men, which were able to escape on camels. And David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. And there was nothing lacking to them, meaning none of the, especially like the people and stuff that David's men had were lacking, right? Nobody was killed, nobody was missing. They recovered all their loved ones. Neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoil nor anything that they had taken to them. David recovered all. And David took all the flocks and the herds which they drave before those other cattle, and said, this is David's spoil. So they recovered their loved ones, they recovered their spoils, and then they got a whole bunch in addition. And David came to the 200 men, which were so faint they could not follow David, whom they had made also to abide at the brook Besor. And they went forth to meet David, and to meet the people that were with him. And when David came near to the people, he saluted them. Then answered all the wicked men and men of Belial, of those that went with David, going to show you that not every single one of David's men were righteous, right? They were with him, right? They followed him, but you had some that were wicked, some that were sons of Belial. So they said, because they went not with us, we will not give them aught of the spoil that we have recovered, save to every man his wife and his children, that they may lead them away and depart. So basically, since they didn't want to come with us, talking about they're too tired or whatever the case is, they're not getting anything, except for their wives and their children that they had, and then they could take them and leave. Then said David, ye shall not do so, my brethren, with that which the Lord Yahweh hath given us, who hath preserved us and delivered the company that came against us into our hand. So you don't do that. This is a great spoil that the Lord gave us. It's not for us to monopolize it or be selfish about it. For who will hearken unto you in this matter? But as his part is, nobody's going to agree with you concerning this. So let it go. But as his part is that goeth down to the battle, so shall his part be that tarrieth by the stuff. So when they divide the spoil, you know, as much as you get if you went versus whoever stayed is divided the same, right? There's no nothing unfair, no unfair business here. So shall his part be that tarrieth by the stuff. They shall part alike. So they're going to divide the spoils equally. And it was so from that day forward that he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel unto this day, that if they go out and they get spoils, if there's some that didn't go of the army, of those that of their host or their band, they would still divide it amongst themselves in a fair manner. And when David came to Ziklag, he sent of the spoil unto the elders of Judah, even to his friends, saying, Behold, a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. And you can see why they loved David, right? Because he was, very considerate, and moved in a way, that you can see why he would be a one after the Lord's heart. Somebody else would have probably been like, nah, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is our spoils. We're keeping this. But out of consideration, right, he thought about that. He sent some, as it says, unto the elders of Judah, those of which were with him, right? Not physically, but those that were his friends that supported him or even aided him at some point. To them which were in Bethel, and to them which were in South Ramoth, and to them which were in Jatir, and to them which were in Aror, and to them which were in Siphmoth, and to them which were in Eshtamoa, and to them which were in Rachel, and to them which were in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, and to them which were in the cities of the Kenites, and to them which were in Hormah, and to them which were in Korashan, and to them which were in Athach, and to them which were in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men were wont to hunt. Now, when you look into this, this doesn't mean like, it basically means all the places that they had, as it says here, visited, right? Or they had roamed, or they were accustomed to rove. So when in their fleeing from Saul, they basically went all over, right? Finding places to dwell, and in those places, they would get assistance. Remember, we read how there would be times when David would get word that Saul was coming. Well, how do you think that was? So clearly there had to be people that were also in these different areas where David and his men sought for refuge that helped him. And that brings us to the end of 1 Samuel, the 30th chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rechak Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.